Iran. We're seeing escalations, some preparations right now. I want to know, do you think, number one, they're warranted, and are they wise, the route we're going?
Yeah, I think we have to look at it a couple of ways. One, we've been dealing with the Iranians for decades. So, the Navy's been, sailing through the Straits of Hormuz. I've been through the Straits of Hormuz probably half a dozen times. The Navy knows how to deal with the Iranians. The Iranians frequently will try to run small, fast attack boats against our ships. We know how to deal with that. We know how to deal with the Iranian threat in Iraq through Iranian proxies. So I'm probably not as worried as most people are about the Iranian threat. What I am worried about, though, vis-a-vis Iran, is a miscalculation.
On whose part?
So on either part. But primarily on the Iranians' part. I have not seen the intelligence. I don't know what the intelligence says, but what I do know is I've got a lot of faith and confidence in the military and the intelligence community. And if they say there's a threat out there, I think we have to believe that there's a threat, but that they are also taking all the right steps to deal with it.
Is the intel community, is the military preparing for something serious?
I think the military is always preparing for contingencies. So this is what the military does. We plan. We plan worst case scenarios. So a lot of times the public will get wind that the military is planning X.
Yeah.
And they think, oh my gosh, well, that's what the military does. I mean, we're going to plan for worst case scenario, but we're also going to make sure that we don't escalate things unduly. I mean, the one thing we always try to do is have proportional responses. That's the first order of business. If there is a strike, if we're going to propose something to the president, it will be proportional and thoughtful.
Afghanistan has been called the forever war,
right.
And we recently had General McRaven here, who used to oversee U.S. and allied forces there. And his best advice, it seemed, at this point to the Trump administration is just, quote, muddle through.
Right.
He told me we cannot realistically pull all of our forces out. Do you see it the same way?
I do, actually. And having worked for Stan McChrystal a couple of times, one of the great generals of our generation, and he knows what he's talking about. So as painful and as challenging as it might be, I am concerned that if we broker a deal with the Taliban, and we begin to remove U.S. troops from Afghanistan, that puts the Afghans at great risk. I mean, we've been in Europe since the end of World War II. We've been in South Korea since the end of the Korean War. Now, again, Afghanistan is not Europe and it is not South Korea. Having said that, I think there is both a moral obligation to stay with our partners, the Afghans, who have fought side by side with us, and we've made a lot of progress. And there's probably a strategic obligation to stay in the region and to have some footprint in Afghanistan.
There's a name in the news right now that's new to a lot of us, maybe not to you, Edward Gallagher.
Yep.
He was, and let me get his title right, Navy SEALs Special Operations Chief. You know that he's accused of a few different war crimes, right, of slitting the throat or stabbing this ISIS militant, a young man who had been stabilized by medics, maybe killing unarmed people in the Mideast. He said, part of his defense reportedly was, this is how things were done in the past. We just kept it to ourselves. We didn't go up the chain of command. We didn't make a big hullabaloo. Is that true?
We are a nation of laws. And one of the laws that the military follows is the law of armed conflict. Mm-hmm. And the law of armed conflict is very clear when you're dealing with detainees or POWs and how you have to treat them, and civilians as well. And if we get to the point, again, the Gallagher situation completely aside, if we get to the point where we do not hold people accountable for violating the law of armed conflict, then in some cases we're no better than the enemy. And so we have to hold people accountable if they violate the law of armed conflict and if there is a war crime.
The military and the IC, are they still working hand in hand despite what's happening from the White House?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, Chance, I mean, the fact of the matter is we don't do anything in the military without the intelligence organizations. As I mentioned to you, I just came from speaking this morning at one of our great intel agencies. I'm probably the biggest fan you're going to meet of the intelligence community. These are great young Americans, great patriots that are working hard to provide the military and the government the intelligence they need to make the right decisions. So, what happens in Washington at the administration and up on Capitol Hill, at the end of the day, the people in these organizations, they're going to do their job. Okay. And they're going to bust their hump to be the best they can be.
Does the Navy have the appropriate technology right now that it needs?
Oh, I certainly think it does. I think the issue isn't so much, I think, technology.
It's the human element.
There's a human element to it, right. And sometimes I think we have gotten to the point, and again, between the McCain and the Fitzgerald, the reports are out on how a series of events occurred.
Yeah.
The Navy held everybody in the chain of command, to include the fleet commander, which is almost unheard of, but appropriate, accountable for these actions. The Navy, and I think all the services understand there's a need for accountability. But here's the issue with technology. We have to be careful about becoming too reliant on technology. Technology is important, but experience, I think, trumps technology. I would say experience and technology together are better than trying to rely on one or the other. When you take a look at the great heroics, the heroics that have occurred in since 9/11 that I've watched closely, it always ends up being mano a mano. It is somebody in a close-in firefight or a knife fight in some cases where guys came away with the Medal of Honor as a result of their incredible actions. Because guess what? War fundamentally hasn't changed in the last, since the beginning of man. It is brutal, it is harsh. The technology will actually make it cleaner, in a tactical sense. You can't hold the computer accountable. People used to talk to me about autonomous drones, and they said, we have all these autonomous drones. I said, we don't have autonomous drones.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
People that think we have autonomous drones, we have the capability, but that's not the way drones work.
Right.
As I mentioned about these 100 people. So when we send a Predator or Reaper out there are 100 some odd people that are watching, and there is an officer that's going to have to make a decision on whether we use that hellfire on that drone or what we're doing. Drones just don't fly around seeking people.